Welcome to Minerva. My name is Elizabeth and today I'm going to be showing you a video tutorial of how I have made the Burda 6401. So this is the pattern itself. It's just two variations of a summer dress. So this is perfect for anyone that is wanting to start off sewing. It's a very easy beginner project. So one of the main features of this dress is it is made to fit quite oversized. So it is not very restrictive, so in summer it's nice and easy, breathable fabric just so that you're comfortable and also having a bit of fashion in there. So there are two versions of this dress. So on here you can see there is version A, which is just the one that's in this check fabric, and then there's version B. So the differences between these are that one has a cuffed sleeve and one has a gathered and flowy sleeve. So I have chosen to do view A of this, so that's the one with the cuffed sleeve. Just suits my style more. So this is the video tutorial that I will be doing today on view A. So the main difference between the two dresses, and really the only difference between these two dresses, is the sleeves. So obviously you can follow this tutorial up until the instructions for the sleeves. And because this dress is so beginner friendly, working out how to do view B's sleeves is actually very simple. It's the same sort of pattern as doing the gathered skirt, just in a very smaller way. So for this project, the suggested fabrics were fabrics like cottons, linens, and things like that, things that are easy for the summer, things that are breathable, light and airy. So I have used this floral print pattern here. You can see it's blue, it's a really lovely linen. It's very soft and airy, so I definitely know I'll be wearing this in the summer. You also will need a tiny bit of interfacing just for the sleeves, and if you are doing view B, then obviously you won't need the cuffs on the sleeves, so you won't need the interfacing, but that's just what is needed for view A, so that's what I've used. I then needed some matching thread and a zipper. So the zipper I used was a 24-inch zipper, and obviously lastly you will need your pattern. So once you've cut out your pattern pieces, you are ready to cut out your fabric, and before you cut out your fabric you need to know which size that you will need to cut out. So obviously ready to wear clothes that you get in a shop are very different from sewing patterns. If I was to go into, say, a H&M or a Primark, usually my sizing would be about a 10. But for this project, for Burda, the sizes come up quite a bit big, so I actually come into a size 14. So for dresses on patterns, you usually go by your bust size. So if you were to get a tape measure and tape it all the way around your bust at the biggest point, that will be your bust size. So once you've found your bust size, you need to look at the diagram that is on the pattern. So mine came to a size 14, and that is the pattern that I cut out, and it fits me perfectly now that it has been cut out. And now it fits me perfectly. It's especially important to look up the actual sizing of the pattern, because a lot of the time a lot of companies actually are American companies, so all of their sizing does come in American sizing, which we know is smaller than UK sizing. So before you cut out, you need to make sure that the sizing will fit you. So once you've figured out which size is yours, all you've got to do is cut them out and then cut it onto your fabric. So once you've got that done, I will meet you and we'll get on with this tutorial. So for this video, you're going to need all of the different parts for view A. So I've cut all of mine out. So I've got the sleeve band, I've got the bias tape here, I have two sleeves, which is this one, the front and the back, and then the two skirt pieces. So once you've got them cut out, what you're going to want to do is put in the notches and the dots. Now, to get this project started, the first thing you're going to do is need to make your bias tape. So that's exactly what I'm doing here. So if you take the pattern piece that's called the bias tape, fold it in half lengthwise and iron it down. Then open that fold and then fold it into fours. So fold the outside into the middle on both sides. You'll notice that sometimes the piece will curve because it's actually supposed to be cut on the fold. This is perfectly fine, just make sure that your edges are straight. So I'm folding both edges into the middle. After that's fully ironed down, what you're going to do is then fold it in half again so that all of the raw edges are on the inside. This will make it clean on the outside so that it looks nice to look at. Next, you're going to be taking your cuff sleeves for your sleeve here and putting the interfacing onto them. So making sure that the glue side is on top on the wrong side of the fabric. Then you're going to fold this piece in half and iron it down along the fold line. This should be marked on your pattern piece and it is straight down the middle of the piece. Now getting onto the actual construction of the dress. Firstly, you're going to take the top piece, the front piece and the back piece. So what you're going to do is be pinning these at the shoulder seams at the top right sides together. Once you've done this, all you're going to do is take it to your sewing machine and stitch with a 5/8 of an inch all the way down the sides. So that's what I'm doing here. After you've done this, then you're just going to need to take that iron again and fold the seams open. Now taking that bias tape, you're going to find the middle of that and then find the middle of the bodice piece. So you're going to fold it out and tack it down to the piece. So putting right sides together here. Make sure that the bias strip is evenly distributed throughout the neckline. You will have some excess at the ends and that is perfectly fine. You'll just need to cut them off when it's all sewn down. So here I am just sewing it down, and it does tend to move because there is a lot of fabric here, so if it takes you a little bit longer to do it and you have to unpick some, that is perfectly fine. So I'm just stitching here down the first fold line, which I think was 3/8 of an inch. Now that's tacked down, I'm going to be folding everything over so there is no raw edges. So I'm just folding it onto the wrong side of the fabric. And there you can see that it is a nice band at the top. Make sure you put a lot of pins into this just so that it is secure under the sewing machine so you can get a nice clean finish. So that's just what it should look like when it's finished. The last thing we're going to be doing with the top piece for a while is just sewing down the side seams. So I'm just doing that here, I'm pinning them down, and then I'm going to take them to the sewing machine and then do exactly what we did for the shoulder seams. So just stitch them down and then take it to the sewing machine and either fold everything out and press them, or you can do what I did and I just did some French seams just to hide all of the raw edges. Now we're moving on to the skirt, and I'm taking the back skirt piece and putting the notch in. So this is just an indicator of where to stop stitching, because where this opens is where the zip's going to fit. So you don't want to put too much stitching up the top because it means that you won't be able to get in and out of the skirt. So I'm going to pin up to that notch and then sew up to that point, starting at the bottom and stitching upwards. Now I'm just going to take my front skirt piece and pin that to the back pieces. There's going to be a lot of fabric here, so if it takes a bit to muddle through the fabric, then that is completely fine. So I'm just taking my other side, and the difference for this one is that you're going to stitch from the bottom to the top or from the top to the bottom. There is no place to stop, there's no notch, because this is just the side seams. So pin them all down and stitch them just like you did the other one, but just straight to the top. Remember to lay your seams flat as well, so there's less bulk when you're stitching everything together. Now what I'm going to do is doing the gathers. So the skirt is a big gathered piece, so what I'm going to do here is set my sewing machine to the longest stitch length that it does, and I'm going to do 2 lines across the top of the skirt. Now I've sectioned this into 3 separate pieces, so I'm going to do those 2 lines, tie a knot in the top in one of the ends, as I'm just doing here, and then take the other end and pull along it so that the top of the skirt will start gathering. This is just so that the top part and the bottom part fit the same length, and it gives the gathered effect of the skirt. So as you can see, I'm just pulling it along here, and I'm pulling on the top strings, not on the bottom strings. And it's very important that you have a long stitch length, because it's easier to get through and make the gathers. Then I'm taking my stitch length back to the normal length after everything is done, and I am just stitching everything down so that the gathers are secure and they're not moving anymore. You can also readjust these gathers just to make everything even, so it will look more of a finished look. Now what I'm doing here is just stitching my skirt to the top. So make sure that you are matching the seams at the sides and at the back, and making sure everything fits in place. You can add a lot of pins here because there's going to be a lot of bulky fabric, so it's just an easier way to make sure that you've got everything secure. Now I'm just taking it to the sewing machine and stitching that all down. So here my stitch was 5/8 of an inch for the seam allowance, and that means that the stitching inside was not caught by any of the new stitching. After I've done this, I just went back and I used my overlocker to neaten the edges of the meeting here. So obviously if you don't have an overlocker, you don't have to do that. It's just because I know that linen frays a lot, so I just decided to do that just so that I would reduce it. So now we are moving on to the zip. So I've added it into one side, as you can see. Now the way I've done this is I've laid it on the right side of the fabric with the right side meeting. So I'm just going to show you how to do the second part. So I'm just lying it flat down on the raw edge of the fabric, and I have marked where my seam line is. So I've done that by closing the zip and marking where I've already sewn it in, so where the notch will meet it will be right on the center. So I'm just adding a pin in there, and then I'm going to add pins in all the way up the zipper and attach it. So obviously there I've got it twisted, so I'm just going to untwist it in a second and then pin it back in the same place. It's a good idea here to have your your waist seam facing upwards, just so it lies flat. So I'm just going to finish pinning all of that on, and it should meet right at the top. So I'm folding over the top of the zipper tape as well, so it's just out the way when it should be stitched down. So I've changed my foot here to my zipper foot. This just makes it a lot more easy for me to stitch it down closer to the zipper teeth. So if you don't have a zipper foot, that's perfectly fine. Just use your normal foot. But you could also hand stitch this down just to get a more clean edge and have less of the zip being shown. Now I am moving on to my sleeves. So I'm starting the cuffs here and I'm folding them in half and I'm just going to stitch them down to make a loop. Doing that with both here obviously, and I'm just stitching that down. Now taking the main sleeve piece, I'm just folding that in half and then down the small edge I'm going to stitch it all down. So remember, all of these steps you're going to have to do for both sleeves. Now what I'm doing is just doing the gathering like we did before for the skirt. So it's exactly the same thing, it's just in a loop. So this is on the bottom edge of that sleeve. So I'm stitching with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance and then a 1/2 an inch seam allowance. Remember when you're doing gathering that you shouldn't have any back stitching, so just make sure that you've put your stitch length to the longest length it can be and just stitch along. No need for any back stitching because that will make the threads impossible to pull out. So as you can see here, that's all gather is done and I'm just going to pull it out and make sure it's gathered. So I've measured my cuff length and I'm just making sure it's even. So now I'm putting the sleeve inside the cuff and I'm going to pin it down, making sure that my seams are meeting at the same point. Now I'm just going to stitch that cuff down with 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Make sure that the right side for the cuff meets the wrong side of the sleeve so that when everything is put out it will be the right sides out. I'm just taking away some of that seam allowance and some of that bulk by cutting it off. Make sure you just don't get too close to the stitching because we don't want anything breaking. Now pulling that out and folding it back over, fold it in half and then fold it in half again and pin it back down. This will make sure that there is no raw edges and everything is clean. Then I'm just doing a top stitch here to stitch everything down. Now that your sleeves are finished, you're just going to be attaching them into the dress. So where the dress opens, put it right sides together, seams together, and pin that down. Then taking it to the sewing machine, just stitch with another 5/8 of an inch stitch around. I've also done a overlocking stitch around here just because I know that because arms move so easily, the fraying will happen with this fabric. So I've just made sure that there aren't any raw edges. You could also do a zigzag stitch here to secure some things down, but obviously if you're using a fabric that doesn't fray that much, there is really no need. Now what I'm doing is just doing the hem for the dress, so I've ironed it up an inch and then I have folded it over 3/8 of an inch and then I'm just stitching all of that down. And here is our finished dress. So as you can see, it's just an oversized dress and the cuffs on the sleeve here are fitted perfectly with the gathers and just has the zipper all fitted down the back. So I'm really happy of how this turned out, and I'll definitely be wearing this on hot summer days. We can dream that it's going to happen in the UK this year and we can all go out and have fun. So this is what I will be definitely wearing. All of the materials that I have used for this tutorial today are available to buy on the Minerva website. So everything will be linked in the description of this video so you can go and check them out. I will be showing a clip of this dress on me in just a second, and I really hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have and you decide to make one of your own, then let me know. Please write in the comments of this video, show me your creations. I would really love to see them. Thank you for watching my tutorial of how to sew together the Burda 6401. You've been watching Minerva, and I will see you next time. Bye!